maybe it's the external things that we think are going to shape us forever only last for 5 minutes, and maybe it's the internal things that we think aren't going to matter in 5 minutes that stick around for 5 years, and that's why it's so challenging.
And if it's not going to matter in 5 years, should you concern yourself with it? The answer is yes and no, but to what level? If it's going to matter in 5 years, maybe it deserves your emotional and mental attention more.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed yesterday's episode number 1631. Emily is going to win, and here's why. Today, for episode number 1632, is that correct? Yeah, I think so. A powerful question I wish I started asking earlier. So, I was just at Alan's before this, and I ended up leaving there at 7:15, and I had an hour and 15-minute ride home. And before I left, Alan said, "What episode are we going to do?" And I said, "I don't know, man. I have no idea." And he said, "Well, on the ride home, try to think of something." And I was trying pretty diligently to think of something, and nothing was happening. I'm very tired. It's been a very, very long day. There wasn't much coming in. But I heard a song. A song came on the radio that reminded me of a time, and I think it'll make a really good episode. Have you ever heard of the band Safety Suit?
Negative.
I
probably would recognize a song, but I don't know the band's name.
Yeah, I really wish I could sing one / play one, but if we played it, that's a whole thing. We get taken down.
Give us a little something.
I literally couldn't if I tried. It's one of those. Oh, my chair. It's one of those bands where. Yeah, this is how it's gonna go. It's one of those bands where if you said name 5 songs, I couldn't, but if you played 5 songs, I could probably sing them all along. It's just one of those bands. Well, I heard one of their songs on the ride home, and it brought me back to this time where I'll never forget this. This was such a lonely, challenging moment at the time. I was working in some school because at the time I was doing my weatherization job, and more often than not, we worked in schools. That just was where most of our jobs were. So I was working in the school, and we were putting weather stripping on one of these doors, these double doors that went outside. And I was listening to this band play, and I was so distraught because I was kind of going through a breakup at the time. This was like my second real serious relationship. And I remember hearing this song thinking, this is the worst day ever. This is never going to get any better, and this is going to be my life forever. And then 5 months later, that issue was gone completely. Also, another time, I was in a school working, and this was when Tara and I had first kind of connected. And I remember I sent her another song because we would listen to music pretty often. And it was a very sad song about feeling like I was spending my life on the road and feeling like I was kind of wasting my life. And she sent me a message, and it was something along the lines of, "Don't get so busy making a living that you forget to make a life." And we have that somewhere in the house. I don't know where it is. But that's something that at the time seemed like it was just inconsequential and of very little importance that is still important to this day because that is now my wife.
Nice.
So the powerful question I wish I started asking earlier was, is this going to matter in 5 minutes? Is this going to matter in 5 months? Is this going to matter in 5 years? Here's the challenging thing. It's really hard to know when you ask the question.
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes it's the thing that's not going to matter in 5 years that feels like it's going to. And other times it's the thing that only feels like it's going to matter for 5 minutes that who knows what happens. You could very easily have a drink, get in the car to take a 5-minute ride, and that 5 minutes could change the rest of your life. You never know. You could spend something, or you could spend time doing something for 5 years and end up leaving it in 5 minutes, and then it might never come back to bite you in the butt. Maybe it's a job, maybe it's a relationship. So yes, I understand it's really challenging to do this. But when I'm looking back, a lot of the things that I thought were the end of the world, we always talk about how in high school, and everything is the end of the world. I remember I had pit stains one time, and somebody called me out. They said, "Oh, look at your pit stains." And at the time, it was the biggest thing ever of all time. That actually was something I dealt with for years. It might seem like a 5-minute thing when you go to the next class. It's not that big of a deal. I got prescription deodorant. I used to never wear gray shirts. That is something that haunted me for years and years and years and years. So, yeah, it's a question I wish I asked myself sooner, but I don't know if you really can until you have context of what matters to you.
I remember when I was in college, I actually wrote about this recently. Before I went to my school, WPI, I used to read and hear about, and it's a famous school, at least in this area, New England area. I used to hear about the suicide rate all the time. Because the tech schools that are really a lot of pressure, and I never really realized this at the time, but when you're spending $50,000 a year to go to school and you fail a class, that's like, I don't know, $5,000, $6,000. And on top of that, picture the pressure of letting your family down. And when I went, I had financial aid and scholarships, fortunately, but they were academic based. And I remember when I would fail a test, it was devastating. It was really, really hard on me. I used to have to pull myself out of that and say, is this really going to matter that much in 10 years? But here's the weird thing, and this is where the duality comes in. It does matter a lot if you fail the class or if you fail out of school. So everything matters a ton and not at all. It's like this weird thing. This episode matters a lot because if we miss this episode, we will miss our streak of 1,630. Imagine that. It's like, we had a good run.
I had a minute. Yeah, I told when I was getting ready to leave Alan's, I said I had a minute where I was so excited I'm going to drive home, have dinner, and go to sleep, and then I realized we haven't recorded yet. We have to record an episode at 9:00 at night. This is going to be a challenge, but that's the thing. This episode is going to take us 15, 20 minutes to record. This would matter forever if we didn't do it. So just hold your breath for 15 minutes and do the episode, and you'll be grateful in 5 years that you did. But again, easier said than done, right?
But when you fail a test or you're under pressure and you're under emotional distress, like when I used to fail, if I failed a test, it would be so devastating, and I used to get so down. And I had to say, Alan, this isn't even going to matter. It's not that big a deal. In the grand scheme of things, you failed a test. Who cares? It's all good. But you also have to take things seriously. So it's that weird duality of everything matters, but not everything matters equally. And bad things are not the end of the world, but good things also aren't like the end all be all. You have a big month. Okay, congratulations. Time to try to have another big month. You lose a game, no big deal, There's always next year. It's that weird duality of everything matters, but nothing matters, all wrapped into one. And you have to decide for yourself what's going to matter to you. And Emilia and I, when we first got together, we went to a wedding. She was, one of her friends had a wedding, and it was in Newport. It was beautiful. And it was the first time I'd ever slow danced with her, so that was extra special. And we had a blast. And there was this couple I've talked about, and they did the thing on the dance floor that you've heard me talk about, Kev, where they say, if you've been together for a year, stay on the dance floor. Anyone less than a year, leave the dance floor. Okay, 5 years, and then 10 years, and then 15 years, and 20 years. This one couple that was sitting next to us was out there for more than 30. I want to say it was 40 years, something like that. And of course, Emilia and I were curious because they were a lot of fun. They seemed really in love. And if you're still in love after 40 years, you've got some advice for us. So Emilia asked, what's the trick? What's the secret? How did you guys do it? As we aspired at that as well. And the female in the relationship said, everything that matters and nothing that doesn't. And that's been her and I mantra. Wow. Her and I's mantra for the last coming up on 5 years, 4.5 years. In October, it'll be 5. And everything that matters and nothing that does it. But here's the thing. What does matter? What feels like it matters in the moment is, damn, we didn't go to the gym tonight. We walked instead. That's such a big deal. It feels like a big deal. In the grand scheme of things, is that going to be that big a deal? And so you have to decide for you, and this is where core values come in, which is, you mentioned this episode is about, is this going to matter in 5 minutes? Is this going to matter in 5 days? Is this going to matter in 5 weeks? Is this going to matter in 5 months? Is this going to matter in 5 years? And if it's not going to matter in 5 years, should you concern yourself with it? The answer is yes and no, but to what level? If it's going to matter in 5 years, maybe it deserves your emotional and mental attention more. If it's not going to matter in 5 minutes, make sure you don't get too down about it. And then all of that is relative based on your core values and your goals.
The scary thing is, I think a lot of us get stuck. It's because we take something that, and I'm putting should in quotes, should only be a 5-minute thing, and we carry it for 5 years. Or something that's we think is 5 minutes is actually 5 years. I was telling Alan this. So Alan lives in the town that we grew up in. And I was going to be early today, and I kind of wanted to drive around. I wanted to drive around the town because there's certain places I haven't been in years and years and years. At this point, not decades, but close. We're talking 15 years. And I was driving around, and I when I got to Alan's, I said, it was so strange for me driving by certain houses, knowing the people that grew up there, now looking back and realizing how much trauma they had when they were younger.
Yeah.
And those things that they might have said, well, in 5 months when I go off to college, this isn't going to be affecting me anymore. That's a 5-year thing. That's a 50-year thing if you don't work through it. So this is why it's super challenging because, I don't know, maybe it's the external things that we think are going to shape us forever only last for 5 minutes, and maybe it's the internal things that we think aren't going to matter in 5 minutes that stick around for 5 years, and that's why it's so challenging. Go ahead.
Well said. No, that's good. That's a good distinction.
I think that's
the external.
kind of,
it's like you get the dopamine hit when you get the new car.
Yeah.
But it only, and yeah, maybe the car lasts for 5 years, but the dopamine hit only lasts for maybe 5 days or whatever.
Yeah.
But the internal stuff, that something that happened in 5 minutes, one fight, one physical altercation, one screaming match, one really bad argument with your partner can last, you can regret that for a lifetime. How scary is that? NLU listener, what is happening? I just wanted to jump in here and let you know, if you want to get to the next level faster, we have a free virtual monthly meetup at the first Thursday of every month, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. You can connect with like-minded people and become a bigger part of this amazing global community. The link to register will be in the show notes.
Well, you and I were talking about something earlier. It's not an intimate relationship, but there's a relationship. And one of the people in the relationship came very close to what we call pressing the red button. And just saying something in a relationship, whether it's a friendship, an intimate relationship, a parent and child, whatever it is, business relationship, whatever it is. But there are certain things that you just never say. Because when you say them, you cannot put the stuff back in the box. It's out forever, and then it's up to how much can we work through this together. That might have seemed like it was a 5-minute thing that is going to be a forever thing.
Yeah.
And that is the heaviness of life, unfortunately. That is why it's such a challenging thing. This would be my next level nugget. Just start to try to practice this. At least be mindful of it. At least be mindful of, am I ruminating on this because I think this is going to be a 5-month thing, when really if I just sat with it for 5 minutes, it might go away. And then this would be part 2. What happens to you either compounds or deflates depending on what you do with what happens to you. Now, again, I don't want to blanket. You get pulled over and you get a speeding ticket and you think it's going to be the worst thing in the world, but it's not the end of the world. It's not going to matter in 5 months. Is your insurance going to go up? Sure. But is it really that big of a deal? It's going to go up $20 a month.
But if you never speed again from that trauma,
right,
and you're always tiptoeing under the speed limit by 10 miles an hour, and now you're scared of other things, and now you're scared of cops, and now you're scared of...
That's fair.
You see how it can compound?
Yeah.
It really depends what you do with it.
I just don't want it to be a blanket statement, just because I understand anytime we're talking about, trauma or anything like that, I don't want a blanket statement and say, don't worry about it. I don't want it to be that. But I just think the awareness is important. The awareness is powerful, and if you started asking yourself, or maybe you started reflecting, that's where all this came from for me, just listening to a song. I remember that day. That was one of the heaviest days ever. It seemed like it was a day that was never going to end, and it seemed like it was a day that was going to shape my life in so many different ways. when I'm working on this door, listening to the sad music, just feeling so empty, just no motivations, depressed. And it doesn't affect me at all anymore. But meeting Taryn and then having her say, don't get so busy making a living that you forget to make a life, that's something that is in our home currently. That was a text message I received from her, I don't even know how many years ago, that is quite literally something in our home. And that brought me back to a lot of our first initial conversations that didn't seem like they were going to matter in 5 years. But now they're going to matter forever. So that would be my next little nugget for this episode.
Yeah, and even when you first met, you didn't know the implication. You didn't know the weight of that first interaction. And that's the thing. I didn't know the weight of the DM that I sent to Emilia of, are you in a relationship? And so you really never, it's like this weird thing where you don't fully know. So you have to treat everything with its due attention. But that's challenging. And I don't even know if I know what advice I would give on that necessarily, other than asking the question. That's it. If you ask the question of, is this going to matter in 5 years? And the answer is, it might matter a lot. Okay, give it more attention. If it's, it probably won't matter at all, give it less attention and try to focus your attention on things that are going to be deeply meaningful. I mean, I didn't expect everything that matters and nothing that doesn't to be our mantra 5 years later. And so, yeah, it's really good contemplative episode. And just like those tests, dude, those tests didn't matter that much, honestly.
Yeah.
Oh, I graduated with high distinction. No one cares.
I did terrible in high school. Not terrible. I didn't do well in high school at all.
You thought that was going to be everything.
I thought it was everything.
Maybe, yeah.
Until I decided I wasn't going to go to college. Then I was like, this doesn't matter at all. And that was very freeing. But again, a lot of this has to do with clarity, too. Clarity is a superpower to a degree. If you're clear, it's a lot easier to understand. This matters, this doesn't. Every job I left, I thought it was the end of the world. I always ended up finding another job.
This is my next level nugget. When bad things happen in life, whether there's two ways that challenges happen in life, as far as I can tell. One of them is life kind of stomps on you. And there's a lot of ways that can happen. You know, death of a loved one, really bad, unexpected injury. One of the people I know was sitting at a stoplight doing nothing, and a truck rammed into them, and they had back problems for life. There's bad things happen. And so the first one is life happens to you. The second bucket of challenges, adversity, we'll call it adversity, I think. The first type of adversity happens to you. The second bucket of adversity is the adversity that comes from setting big goals that are deeply meaningful. And so, for example, the college thing, when I fail a test and I'm under all the pressure and I feel like this is the end and it's awful, how do you make that matter? And the only thing I've ever come up with both of those, and I've had a lot of both of those, so I'll just speak for myself here, but adversity number one is life throws adversity at you. Father passed away at 2, when I was 2, when he was 28. Stepfather left at 14. Tons of others that I don't want to get into. The second type is having big goals and the challenges that come with that. And so anyone who has life that has kind of stomped on them, I know many of our listeners feel that way, and people who have big goals, I know many of our listeners feel that way, expect adversity. Adversity is expected. You and I had a hard day today. Just a hard day. And you used to say this all the time, Kev. You used to say, it's only failure if this is the end. If this is the last fitness show you do, or this is the last podcast episode you do, or this is the last training you give or speech you give, then yeah, you failed. But if it's not, there's a way to make those painful moments matter. You know, there are some bullies growing up that were so unbelievably poor or bad to me, disrespectful. There's something I can do if I let it drive me, I can make it matter. And then the pain isn't just pain. At least the pain got transformed or transferred into something great, something meaningful. And that's all I've ever been able to think of. Whenever, I lost my uncle, I was at his funeral, I don't know how many months ago now, but I was sitting there in the church, and it reminded me of, it was in many ways my father's funeral 2.0. And I just was sitting there like, how do I make this life matter more? What can we do with this? What can we do about this? And the answer always becomes live a more magnificent life. Try to live a more meaningful life. That's all I could ever come up with. There's nothing else. When my dog died, got hit by a car at the top of the road. What do I do about this? There's nothing you can do. It happened and it sucks. And there's nothing about it that doesn't suck. There was nothing about that day that wasn't awful. And for those of you who don't know the story, I have shared it in past episodes. My dog was in my arms, dead, at the top of the road because I forgot to close the doggy door. And there was nothing about that doesn't absolutely suck. It was horrible. But what can I do now? Like, what now? And all I've ever been able to come up with is go live a more meaningful life. Try to find a way to turn this pain into power. And that's it. And I think that's what we all can do. And so if it's not going to matter in 5 minutes, don't let it haunt you. And if it is going to matter in 5 minutes or 5 years, do something meaningful with it. Because that's the only way all this junk, all this crap, all this pain, and all this adversity is worth it. It's the only way, is if you find a way to make it bring you to a higher place, even if it's just being more grateful, or being more driven, or being smarter, or being harder working, or being more virtuous, or making better choices, or whatever it is. So that's all I can ever do with adversity. I don't know what else to do with it, other than you either just sit there and let it crumble and crush you, or you say, next test, I'm going to do better. Next time, I'm going to study more. Next time, I'm going to surround myself with smarter people. Next time, I'm going to cheat off my neighbor. I'm kidding. Next time, I'm going to XYZ, right? So there is a way. There's a way to make it matter. And I think it's just keep going or pivot. Learn the lesson and pivot.
As you've said many times, the only wrong answer is to do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely cheated in math class more than once to get by. Am I proud of that? No. Am I ashamed of that? No, not really either, because you got to do, a boy's got to do what a boy's got to do to get through. It is what it is.
I would say you cheated off me, but you weren't in any of my math classes.
No, I was not in any advanced classes.
No honors classes for the kid.
I took honors. What did I take? I took one honors class with Hutch.
Government? Law?
I don't think it was. No, I don't think I took honors law. I don't know. I don't know.
You were in my law class. I know that.
Yeah. There was one honors class somehow I was in. I don't know why. Maybe it was the only way.
It might have been law, dude. It might have been law.
I don't know why.
I was a tryhard, so I took every honors course I could.
Yeah, I was the opposite. I tried to take no honors courses, and it was
except
easy.
for English, because I was like,
Yeah.
Nope.
I was good at English.
Poetry? What are we doing here?
Shall I compare thee to a summer's eve, though art more lovely and more temperate? Temperate? Whatever. Next Level Nation, if you have not gotten your tickets for Next Level Live 2024, please do so. I believe as of the time of this episode, we're 17 days out, 17 days,
Correct.
18 days. Awesome. If you come in person, we're doing a giveaway. We try to do a giveaway every year, so we're going to raffle off 3 things, maybe 4 things, I don't know. But we're going to raffle off at least 3 things. Super excited. I'm going to be going maybe this week, maybe this weekend, to do a little walkthrough of the venue, so I will make sure I get some content. But I know a lot of us are struggling to connect with people that are also into growth, and this is a really, really, really good opportunity to do that, whether it's virtual or in person. Very much to Alan's point, your growth is more in your control than you probably realize. And if you're thinking to yourself, I really wish I could meet more people, and I really want to get to my own next level, this is a great opportunity to do it. Don't regret not doing it, because this is something that definitely can matter in 5 months, and it definitely can matter in 5 years. So link will be in the show notes. We would love to see you there.
David McClellan, I want to say is his name, from Harvard University, based on his research, 94% of your results in life come from your reference group. And your reference group is the people you spend the most time with. So if you're not around growth-minded people, if you're not around people trying to get to the next level, it's going to be very hard to stay motivated. One of the benefits of being in the NLU community is you're just around a lot of other motivated people. They track habits. They have goals. They set goals. It's very inspiring. So we hope you join us. Also, there's 30 people in person, and there's 3 things we're raffling off. So that's pretty good odds. That's 10% chance that you win.
A bit of a numbers guy over there, huh?
Pretty good odds. Pretty good odds.
Yeah, I would say those are pretty good odds, yeah.
Yeah. So we hope you join us. The link will be in the show notes. 17 days out. Let's rock and roll. This is our very best curated stuff all in one day. It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be very nostalgic because this is where we gave our very first speech. My first speech was here. It's in a different room. We got the bigger, nicer room this time, but it'll be very nostalgic to go back there, and I know there's going to be some people that were at the first event at this one, so that's going to be awesome. Tomorrow, for episode number 1633, what's your next unlock? When I got to Alan's today, I was talking about how I was driving around the town, and I said, when you move out of this town, I believe for you it's going to be a massive unlock. I don't know why, and he said, I know, I'm sure it's going to unlock something internally. No idea why, but every time I go, it's like something more unlocks in me, so I figured that would be a good episode to do, so we'll do that tomorrow. As always, we love you. We appreciate you, grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we don't have fans, we have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Keep it all in perspective. Next Level Nation.